My name is Binah. I remember watching my father atop a pile of wood and dressed in our traditional funeral clothing. While growing up, my father and I never got along. We always fought and argued. My parents only have me as their only son, and I have 4 other sisters. My parents always wanted me to get married and have some grandchildren for them. But I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married as a way of rebelling against my father. At the age of 40, I'm watching my 62-year-old father on top of a pile of woods and about to be cremated per tradition. We are a very traditional family, and we follow Buddhism. Most of our Vietnamese people tend to bury our dead, but some of us would cremate our dead for many reasons. In my father's case, the priest told us that my father had wronged the spirits of the water. I guess that's why my father hasn't gone to any body of water for a long time. My father died from being bitten by a water snake. The priest said that snake was sent by the water spirits. I don't know how true that is, since I'm not a very religious person. According to my mother, they were farming, and my father was picking green cucumber when a snake bit his arm. The priest told us that to rid my father of all the sins and wrong things he had done, my father has to be cremated. I watched as the fire consumed his body into ashes, and I thought to myself, this man used to be the richest man in our village. When he died, he cannot take any wealth with him. Instead, he turned into ashes. A few days later, my mother had me, my 4 sisters, and my brothers-in-law all there at our house. She gave us what my father had left behind for each of us, but I refused to take anything from him. Binah, it's been almost 30 years and you still couldn't let go. Your father is dead. At least forgive him. If you don't want anything from him and refuse to love him, then why are you living in his house? After my oldest sister said this to me, I grabbed my stuff. I wanted to leave and be by myself. My mother and my 2 brothers-in-law were trying to stop me and telling me not to go, but I didn't want to live there anymore. There is no point living in a house full of my father's pictures. Every time I looked at them, it reminded me of what he had done and made me angrier. The only place I know that will bring me some warmth and peace is our old village by the river. It's far, but I will go there. I took a boat to where our old village used to be. When I got closer to our old village, I went to rest in another village nearby for the night since our old village was abandoned a long time ago. The day after, I bought a bike and rode around the mountain to the other side where our old village is. The village wasn't too far from the river. But no one lives in the old village anymore. All the houses have no roof. Some houses have 2 or 3 walls left, and some don't even have roofs or walls anymore. According to the rumor, the water in that area occasionally rises, and the water would flood the village for a few days before the river shrinks back down to the river. As I walked around the village, I felt a sadness that I cannot explain. I guess this is why so many people have come to the old village to commit suicide over the years. Many people also reported coming to the village and sleeping in the old broken houses. Before they know it, the water level already rises and surrounding all the old houses. Many people had lost their lives, and I don't know why. I guess the village is cursed. I've tried to find where we used to live, but there are only some houses that are still standing. Most of the houses were already being swept away by the water of the river. I couldn't tell which house belongs to us, as most of the houses still standing are smaller houses. My family has always been rich, and our house is bigger. My father used to have his business in the village, but now everything is gone. I couldn't find our house, so I just went up on one of the smaller bamboo houses that's still standing and still has 3 walls. I went and sat by the door and just looked out far into what I can see, the river. The village wasn't close by the river, but I guess if you can see the river from the village, then it's actually very close. As I was sitting there, I thought about my girlfriend from a long time ago. Her name is Cho. Cho means pearl in Vietnamese. She was beautiful. We were young and so in love. I was about 15 years old, and she was 13 at that time. Cho didn't have a father. Her father died a while back, leaving her mother with Cho and her brother. They were very poor in our village. My parents were against me dating Cho and would tell me on many occasions not to see her anymore. However, Cho and I continued to see each other until one day my father sent me to the city to learn and do business. During that time, I didn't know how long I will be gone, but my father told me that I won't be back home for a while. At least for 2 months, I will be going to the city. I remember before I go, I went to see Cho at night. She gave me one of her blue hair clippers and told me to bring it back to her. I told her that I will bring it back, but for her to stay and wait for me. I was sitting on that old broken house. Tears started dripping down my cheeks as I thought of the past. It's been almost 30 years since I saw Cho. I continue reminiscing about the past. I remembered when I left the village for the city, dark clouds gathered and it started to rain. I should have listened to my heart. The heavens were crying and did not want me to go. Unfortunately, it started raining heavily for 3 weeks while I was away in the city. I didn't know that in the village, the river had gotten bigger and the water was coming closer and closer to our village. It's been raining for almost 30 days. During that time, my father was worried that the river might flood the village, and all his business and our big house would be destroyed and swept away. My father was worried because the priest of the village had warned him the day before that the dragon of the river wanted to take away my father's wealth if he don't offer a virgin soul to the dragon. My father then consulted the priest again as the water began to flood some part of the village. The priest told my father that he must find a young virgin girl and offer her to the dragon of the river. But for the priest to do the ritual, my father must pay the priest. All the priest requires is a young virgin girl. My parents didn't like me dating my poor girlfriend, so my father went to my girlfriend's house. When he knocked and my girlfriend's mother opened, he was on his knee. Cho's mother asked my father, "What is a man like you, with high status, doing here at my door and kneeling in front of me?" I don't know how much money my father offered my girlfriend's mother that day. Cho's mother was willing to give Cho to my father and the priest to do their ritual. They tied my girlfriend's arms to her body and brought her to kneel in the water in the middle of the village. As the priest did his ritual and walked around my girlfriend, the water actually starting to rise. Even the priest didn't know why the water was rising. So out of desperation, my father grabbed a knife and sliced my Cho's neck as an offering to the dragon of the river. As blood began to spread in the water, for some strange reason, the water stopped rising and the rain completely halted. Before night fell, the village witnessed the sun setting behind the mountain. If I were home during that event, I would have prevented my father from doing such a thing. I would have died fighting the rising water and the dragon rather than let Cho be a sacrifice. After that event, there was no flood in the village until 3 years later. I still remember it rained so much that the river started to rise and flood the village. The priest, who was sick in his home, was unable to help my father and the villagers, so everyone started gathering their belongings and left the village. During this time, my father already moved most of his business to the city, so my whole family left the village before it was completely covered with water. There are some people who were lucky to escape the flood, when initially they refused to leave their homes. But once they escaped, they mentioned a big red draconic serpent swimming under the murky water and circling the village. As I was reminiscing and sitting on that broken old house, tears started dripping. I lay down on my back and took a look at the sky through the roofless bamboo house. The dark clouds were gathering. It looked like it was going to rain. It had been a hot day, Some rains might wash my heart anew and my pain away. I took Cho's blue hair clipper out and looked at it and said, "Sorry, Cho. If I were home that day, I would have prevented my father from committing such an act. I would rather die in your place or die with you. Even to this day, I still live in the time of you." As I was saying this, and looking at the sky as the rain began to fall, I heard people screaming. I clipped Cho's blue hair clipper on my shirt collar and got up. I didn't know why I didn't notice, but water was already flooding our old village. I thought people no longer lived there. But why were so many people screaming, and some of them were swimming to higher ground? I looked at an old broken bamboo house that had no wall. A young girl was there screaming for help as the water began to rise underneath. I was going to swim over to help her, but as I looked down, I saw a red dragon circling the village. I was scared to jump down into the river. I heard a voice crying in my heart, saying, "You said if you were there that day, you would not let it happen." Before I knew it, I jumped into the water and started swimming towards that girl. I was lucky that I got to her without the dragon noticing me in the water. I pulled myself out of the water and got up to where that girl is. She came and hugged me as she was crying. I told her that I'm going to break the bamboo ladder of the house, and we'll hold the ladder and float our way to higher ground. I got on my knees and started trying to break the top of the ladder from the house. I tried a few times, and I couldn't get it. So I dived down into the water to try and pull the ladder away from the house. I was running out of air, so I came back up to take a breath. And that's when that girl reached down and grabbed the blue hair clipper from my shirt collar. She then said, "If you risk your life to save a girl that you don't even know, I believe that you would save me on that day too if you were home." The rain suddenly stopped. I looked up, and it was no longer the same girl. It was Cho. I got out of the water and just looked at her. "Thank you for keeping your promise and bringing me back my hair clipper," she said. The water was calm. I hugged her and held her in my arms. "Binah, there was no dragon, but the villagers killed me because they feared there was a dragon. Because of that, the heavens cursed the village and gave me the power to turn into the thing that the villagers fear. I've waited so long to get my blue hair clipper back, but most importantly, I've waited so long just to see you again," she said. The river was getting smaller as the water level was shrinking. I could see the sun coming out from behind the dark clouds, and the sun ray was in my face. That's when I woke up. It was just a dream. I was on my back, looking at the sky and reminiscing, and I fell asleep. The sun was on my face. It was already morning? I must have slept there the whole night or something. I looked at my shirt collar and the blue hair clipper was gone. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find it. But for some reason my dream had made me feel free. It was as if my heart was washed anew. I got up to a sitting position and started sobbing. I came down from the house, and after spending some time walking around the old village, I went back to the city to take care of my mother and run my father's business. A few years later, I got married to a young widow who had lost her husband. This young lady had a small son and daughter, which I brought them in as my own. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day or night.